Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we begin a 5-day program on intuitive interspecies communication. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be able to be announcing a partnership with Animaltalk Africa that is going to be teaching interspecies communication, leading to advanced master's and PhD degrees with Ubiquity University. I want to just take a few minutes to give a little background and history to this really, in my view, momentous milestone in the history of the university, and I think in world culture. When I became president of the university back in February of 2005, I started my tenure. I was actually midwifed into the university by a shaman elder, a woman named Apila Colorado, who just brought me in through dreams and various communications. And she told me that I had to dedicate my tenure to the sacred feminine, to Mary Magdalene and the Black Madonna, which I did, and that led to our pilgrimage in the fall of 2005 to France, to Rock Amador, the site of the most sacred of the Black Madonnas in Europe, and then finally to Chartres. And that began our annual pilgrimage to Chartres, which was considered by the Druids the most potent, energetic site in Europe, and was associated with the energetic quality of the sacred feminine. And then shortly after I had begun my tenure and was selecting the courses for the year, she called me up and said, "Jim, you need to start courses in geomythology. You're teaching Roman mythology and Greek mythology and Hindu mythology." She says, "But you know, there's a mythology of the earth itself, that the earth is as conscious as humans. And in fact, we're conscious because she's conscious. And learning the mythology of Mother Earth is where the university needs to be grounded." And I had never thought that thought. Geomythology. One of the faculty at Ubiquity was a gentleman, a shaman from Texas named Will Tagle, who had founded the Earth Tribe, who did sweats and sacred ceremony with the white buffalo, which are considered rare buffaloes and totemic animals among the Native Americans of North America, with the vast herds of the bison, the buffalo. And he said, "Yes, let's do that." So the university began a series of courses where we would take students into the wilderness to learn the mother tongue. We would go to a site in Texas, this huge, massive rock that has been considered sacred by the Native Americans for tens of thousands of years. And we would sit on the rock for 3 or 4 days and just sit in silence, seeking to quiet our minds enough to listen to what the rock was trying to tell us. I was part of those courses. And I communed with the rock. I never thought one communed with rocks before that experience. And Will Tagle taught us about the mother tongue and how it's possible for humans to communicate with every aspect of the ecosystem, the water, the rivers, the oceans, the lakes, the ponds, the mountains, configurations of desert, the juxtaposition between the different ecosystems, the ley lines, the birds, the animals, all living creatures communicate extensively, not only among themselves, but with each other. And the human race is the only species that's outside that communication. We have shamans. We have people like you're going to hear this week and in this session who have that faculty through learning that can communicate with particular animals. But it's a faculty that all of us have. And it's a faculty in a turbulent world where the human race literally is falling off the precipice into its own self-destruction through unleashing climate change and climate disasters in an accelerating way and engaging in conflicts that are escalating toward global war in Europe and Ukraine and the Middle East and Gaza, and increasing tensions with China in Asia. I believe fundamentally that it is humanity's capacity at this moment to learn from the indigenous peoples, to learn from the clairvoyants, the elders, the shamans amongst us who've learned the mother tongue and learn it ourselves in whatever way we can with our pets, with the plants that we have in our homes or our gardens, however we can begin to commune and ultimately engage in intelligible communication with the larger ecosystem. That is, in my view, the greatest single priority for humanity. It's not to try to settle the conflicts amongst us humans. We're not going to do that on our own. The only way that that's going to happen is for us to transcend and include, to go out beyond our humanity and learn once again the preciousness, the vitality, the compassion, the wisdom of the larger living ecosystem, including the extraterrestrials that are now present on our Earth, that is going to allow us to remember who we really are. And that is part of a larger ecosystem that we've forgotten our essential relationship with. So learning the mother tongue, in my view, is an imperative for humanity. And I am so excited, everyone, that we have now an academic partnership with Animaltalk Africa, with the White Lion Trust and others that we'll be bringing in, that you can take their courses and then bring those courses in to master's and PhD degrees at Ubiquity University. Just imagine if we had a cadre worldwide of animal plant communicators in a scientifically rigorous way and in an intuitive, communal way. It's a thrilling prospect to know is possible for humanity at this time. So it's with great pleasure and with a sense of humility and privilege that I want to introduce Wynter Worsthorne, who's the founder of Animaltalk Africa, who's been teaching intuitive interspecies communication for many, many years. She's a colleague and friend of Linda Linda Tucker, that you've seen on Humanity Rising many, many times. Wynter, I want to turn the program over to you with much appreciation for all you're doing, which can assist humanity at this critical moment to navigate through the complexities that we're in.
Thank you so much, Jim, for that really, truly beautiful introduction to this way of life. I've often said this work, but it's not work. It's a way of life. It's a way of being with humanity. And yeah, I'm very excited for this program. I'm excited how far I see as we know it, now know it, has come from when I started over 20 years ago. And to open the Humanity Rising session, I thought it would be an honor and a privilege to bring Linda Tucker, my dear friend and colleague, who I almost started my journey with simultaneously. I'd only been sort of committed to animal communication for about a year before I met Linda. And I've never looked back. She brought me into the heart of the project. And yeah, today what we're going to do, we're going to actually discuss our journey together and show everybody how intuitive interspecies communication has worked in a very grounded, practical way in a leading conservation project. An essential conservation project for the world at this time. So I'm sure most of you will already know Linda from her previous appearances on Humanity Rising. And Linda, thank you so much for joining us on this first day, because it's really wonderful to be able to share this with you.
Oh, Wynter, I wouldn't have missed it for the world. Literally, This is such an exciting moment because we knew it would happen. We knew that as humanity rises into a remembrance of our true natures, that interbeing or intuitive interspecies communication of the mother tongue, as we call it, is inevitable. There can be no future human. There can be no human without our communication with the rest of our planet, with all the inhabitants of this planet. So this is a moment we knew would happen, and it's happening on a broader scale. It is the new human birthing. So in our project, every single thing that happens to you through nature is meaningful. It becomes very clear that nature is educational, that is inviting a higher consciousness in humanity. So we always make that clear with anyone entering into this sacred space in the heart of the ecosystem, that whoever comes to visit them, whether it might seem a bit sinister or not, is actually coming as an educator and a luminous being with a message for them. And that changes everything. We never, ever take firearms into wilderness. Never, even though by law in this country, you can't guide people into the wilderness without a firearm. We won't do that because that doesn't represent the true relationship that we know is within our true natures. So Wynter's walked this journey with me as very much from the beginning as we established this organization and its work on the front line of conservation.
And that, you know, just those words, Linda, speaks to the absolute law of interspecies communication or intuitive communication. That is that love, unconditional love, connects and fear disconnects. And so many people approach other beings with fear, whether they're other human beings or nature beings, or even the elements. There's always seems to be an us and against them, and it's been like that for centuries in certain cultures, and yet in other cultures, the very ancient ways embrace nature, and this is where the skill stems from. It's nothing new. It's something that is innate in us all, and some of us have just been called to, sort of learn to better our skills in that. But it's really possible for every single human being to communicate with any other being in life in this way. And it's all about the heart. It's all about connecting with the heart, with that energy frequency of unconditional love. That is the key. And I know, Linda, you always speak about your mentor, Maria Corso, who said love and respect go together when we're working with nature. And, you know, those two, and I always bring in the element of joy, because joy is what also we experience when we're in that space of connection with the animals.
It's that bliss of oneness, the heart connection. When you realize you are not alone, you are truly connected with the most beautiful, beautiful sense of nature's wonderment. And we'll go on to talk about, I'd like to talk about how this project has been anchored, you know, in real action and in scientific decision-making all through its key moments over the decades. But it's always gone hand in hand with deep intuitive knowledge systems, indigenous knowledge systems. Wynter referred back to Maria, my mentor, and you might remember that that was the turning point in my life when I was rescued on foot with a baby on her back, and I was trapped in the middle of a pride of lions who were circling me, 24 lions, really to wake me up. It was a wake-up call. I was completely shut down in the consumerist world of advertising, marketing, and glamour industry. And it needed that near-death experience to bring me to my heart. It was a heart ignition. And from that point on, I could not deny that something very real happened there and that the lions were trying to bring me to my true calling. So that was the reference, Wynter speaking about my teacher, Maria Corso, who could communicate with nature in such a way that she could calm an aggressive pride of lions who, to all intents and purposes, could have resulted in a fatality that night. But her understanding that they are family, that nature is family, the lions are my family. When I asked her, how did she do that? She said, but they are my family. Why would they harm me? That's why I took the baby and put the baby on my back. And that is that sense of communion. If you can cross the species barrier in that way and know that nature is pure love, fundamentally, the signs of aggression and trauma are the imposition of humanity's ailments on a system that was created in love. So it's reflecting and mirroring back to us what we have imposed on the greater system. And as we start healing ourselves and creating a safe space, nature ultimately leads us into the solutions.
Mm. And, you know, that's what I've loved about being involved with your project from the very beginning, is that you made a promise to Mara, the sacred lioness born on Christmas Day in a place called Bethlehem, South Africa. You made a promise to get her to freedom. And I remember meeting you for the first time after I'd read your book, and it was at London Victoria Station, of all places, when we both come from South Africa, with Dr. Ian Player, who was your also one of your mentors and dear friends. And then meeting Mara, actually seeing her in the dungeons of the zoo in Johannesburg, about
Just
6
need to
months maybe.
contextualize for everyone that, you know, the pledge to Mara was in the year 2000 after her birth. And then it involved police raids and court action to get her out of the grip of this killing industry. And temporarily, she was housed in the Johannesburg Zoo, who recognized that she had these genetics they wanted. And then, you know, they wanted her to breed her and keep her in the zoo. And so Wynter and I, who had forged this alliance, came to communicate with her. And as Wynter's explaining, she was in this dungeon beneath us. We were above her. She was kept in darkness and forced to breed her cubs in darkness because I had a court interdict against the zoo, who was involved in nefarious activities alongside the breeding, what came to be known as the canned hunting lion industry. But Wynter and I were above her dungeon, communicating with her down below, and she started roaring her communication up to us, and then conveyed a message about the importance of her cubs and the role that they would play in healing the world. It was such a profound message that you picked up from her.
And that was about, you know, how important it was for the cubs to go with her, because at the time you only had the capacity to rescue Mara, and that was what you promised. So now you had this other bit of the piece of knowledge that you had to bring the cubs with, and you did. And gosh, I just remember seeing them for the very first time when you had secured the heartlands, when they were in their acclimation boma, which getting used to just being on grass again, just being able to see the sky again. And then I'd really love to speak to that most amazing kind of famous story that you and I always tell about the National Geographic documentary that was being made about the white lions being apex predators, because at the time people thought they were freaks of nature and couldn't look after themselves. So Nat Geo had to show on their documentary that they could hunt for themselves. I'm probably skipping a few steps there, Linda, because we know Mara taught herself how to hunt, taught her young cubs how to hunt.
So statistically, it's 80% failure rate of lions hunting in the wild because they are pride animals. They have to hunt with coordination, and she was alone. She was an adult lioness by the time I released her, and more than that, she had to provide for 3 sub-adult cubs. I mean, it was like an impossibility. And I remember, you know, there was, at that stage, there was a kind of media frenzy around this event because everyone said, this lioness will never survive in the wild. You are sending her to her death. And because of the communication that we had with her, to explain to her that she was being watched by the world, she showed hunting type behavior on the day of her release. And then within a week, she left evidence for me that she had been hunting. Scientifically, if you want to understand what lions have been eating, you have to scratch through their scat. And so that's what we were doing at the time to see. And there were, sure enough, porcupine quills after a week. And a few weeks later, there were little hooves in her scat. So she was hunting against all odds. And not only that, but she was hunting for her sub-adult cubs. So the program tested every single prejudice that humanity might have about nature and nature's capacity to rewild itself. It is nature, the mother, is perfectly able to restore herself. She is waiting for us to rise to the occasion. And that's what this intuitive interspecies communication is an invitation about. It's an invitation to remember our true natures through the heart, the technology of the heart, and find our way back to grace. So the event that Wynter's alluding to was a little while later, when she was a highly accomplished huntress in the wild. And National Geographic wanted to cover the story of her hunting. And there was a German cameraman who was a precision German cameraman who went by the book and textbook. And he had 2 weeks to track this event. And I think we were on day 13, where he would keep coming back from the field and saying, she hunted, but she was in a donga, which is a riverbed. Or she hunted, but I just saw her disappearing with her tail into the bushveld. I have nothing to show that she can hunt. And so on day 13, Wynter arrived in the camp. And I said to her, Wynter, we're desperate. Nothing is on film proving that she can hunt. Can we go out and communicate with her? And I'm handing over to you too.
Yeah, well, there was, it was like no pressure. One night we had to film. We had to ask her to hunt on camera, filming the whole sequence, from the chase, from the takedown and the kill. And it all sounds a bit gory, perhaps, but when you are in tune and in line with nature, you feel the balance and the agreement between all parties. And the story actually shows that as well. And I remember we went out in 2 vehicles. Linda and I were in one of the old Land Rovers, and we tracked and we found the lions, and they were just flat cats. They were really quite skinny. They hadn't eaten for a while. You could see they hadn't eaten a big meal. And they were just lying flat on the road in front of the vehicle. And we went quiet, and I connected with my heart by just sending absolute unconditional love to Mara, who is the mother. And I explained to her the situation just in words and silently in my mind. And I said, it's really important that the world sees how you can hunt. Will you be able to show, let the camera man see this happening? And there was I'm not sure. And then it was a real question came to me. Is this really what Linda wants? Is she ready for this? And I turned to Linda and I said, Linda, you actually have to give her permission, because there seems to be doubt whether it is the right thing to show these magnificent beings, globally, because you've been so protective of them and are still for so long, because they are not understood. And then when you connected with her, Linda, and you gave her your permission, you said, yes, the world needs to see that you are apex predators, that you can survive, that this is not some mad thing that we are trying to do. You are wild, even though you've been hand reared. And then I always forget this part when I'm telling the story, but I saw in my mind's eye, because that's how I receive messages, is through pictures and feelings mainly. And I saw a shooting star. And in my training, I have to be aware of everything that comes to me when we're in this communication. And then I verbalize it. So I say, for some reason, I'm seeing a shooting star. I don't know what it means, but I have to say it. Do you want to carry on, Linda? Or should I?
No, that's your method, that whatever comes to you, you must mention. It was completely irrelevant, seemingly, that message that you received. We watched the action of Mara and her cubs. They'd been flat cats, as you said, fast asleep, and suddenly they stood up. They sort of stretched, and then they went into what looked like predatory hunting mode in front of us as we trailed on behind them, and the National Geographic vehicle was ahead. And strangely, we passed a whole wildebeest herd that gave alarm calls, but they didn't show any interest in hunting the wildebeest herd, which were in the bushveld. And then we heard a very strange thing. We suddenly heard Mara roaring, and the whole pride was roaring. And you, me, and my scientific partner said, well, they're not going to hunt. No lion hunts if they give their place away, right? So we were actually distraught because we thought, she heard us. She definitely showed she heard us, but she's not going to oblige. So it's over. And at that moment, we noticed there was a shooting star, and we commented on it, not putting two and two together, that was the sign she was giving us. And at the same moment, then we said to the National Geographic group, well, let's go home. It's over. And they said, stop, she's hunting. Because what had happened, she had woken the warthogs from a warthog burrow. Do you want to go on and tell?
Sorry, you froze for a bit there, Linda, so I was worried you were disappearing. But yeah, she had started digging to try and get a warthog. And we heard over the radio, we were stationary at that point, and the camera crew was with them. And it was radio silence, radio silence. And then they came back a few minutes later and said, oh no, she caught a warthog. She caught her right in front of us, but we weren't ready with our camera. We didn't get it. So we thought, oh my goodness, well, she did what we asked, and bad timing. And then radio silence again. And then she went and pulled out another warthog. This is with the assistance of her three sub-adults. And again...
3 times.
Yeah.
They weren't ready.
So the second time, they didn't quite get it right. The third time, she did it again for the camera. She pulled out a warthog. And if you've ever seen that National Geographic documentary, there is a scene where they've got their paws on the warthog. The warthog is looking directly at the camera as if to say, okay, ready? Are you ready now? Can we go? And then, it was finished in an instant. And they got their footage. And it was just the most astounding thing. And, over my experiences in the year, I know never to doubt that the animals understand what we are asking of them. And it's not about controlling them. It's not about having our needs met for their, asking them to change their behavior because of us. It is really giving them the options, telling them what's going to happen, knowing that they understand, and then leaving it to their choice and their free will, because they do have free will. They will agree or not, depending on the highest, best possible outcome for everybody, because they have that connection to the divine that that we have mostly lost. And that, just that example is something that was so special very early on in the project days. And there's numerous examples that we can share along those lines.
I think it's very important to say the project was always and still is based on bringing leading scientific advancements into relationship with ancient indigenous knowledge systems. And Dr. Apila Colorado and her Worldwide Indigenous Science Network have met here on a number of occasions, bringing indigenous knowledge holders together with scientists in a bid to find that handshake between these disciplines, with science ultimately humbling itself to serve the ancient knowledge systems. And when scientists are humble in that way, there is a way of working together. So a little example, it's daily in this project. But we always combine science with indigenous knowledge, and specifically in service of nature. So it's an ecocentric project. Earth comes first in every decision we make, rather than, we know egocentric. We all know what that feels like when you put yourself first, and it's not a happy experience. To be a true interspecies communication, you need humility and just to drop into that oneness of knowing that all is one ultimately. But one of those moments where science, just to show you how powerful this work is as well, is all the lions wear radio collars in this project, because in the greater ecosystem, they could be at risk. So that's how we track them when we go out in a vehicle and track them. They each have their own radio collar. And when we first fitted Mara, the collar was working, everything was fine. Once she came around, suddenly it wasn't working. And I know my scientific partner at the time says, it was working. And I realized I had to communicate with her. And she said, I don't want this around my neck. I had to explain to her that it's our way of protecting her. If she gets caught in a poacher's snare, if she's injured in some way, we would like to use telepathy and telemetry to track her so that we can best serve her. Once she heard that and accepted that, the device started working again. So we're talking about high frequency knowledge here. And, it's blessing us with connecting with us that we might rise to the occasion and understand better the mother tongue.
Yeah. And, the best laid plans, because, South African conservation is very much, it very much works on this kind of patriarchal, old paradigm, old sort of Western world school of conservation, and ignores really the deep intuitive level of communicating with nature and seeing what nature needs. And so often in this project, the lions have shown, or all of nature has shown you and all the people working with the project what they need. This is just something that's popped into my mind. It's a really short, silly example of, do you remember, I think it was when there were those huge floods, Linda, and the earlunt, which is the sacred animal of the Bushmen. they went out because there were fences down. It was chaos, and they went out. A couple of them went out of the protected reserve, and I remember, I'm not sure if I think I was there at the time, and I remember one of the team members at the gate on the radio saying, Mama Linda, the earlant is here. I think he wants to come in. Can I open the gate for him? So he'd managed to return on his own volition, found his way back home into this protected space. So the animals really know where they are safe as well. And because the heartlands are in an area where there is hunting, trophy hunting is still allowed. But your space that you have created and the lands that the White Line Trust has managed to purchase, it is a safe space. And you've had so many of the animals pass through there almost to bless those grounds. And when you walk, Jim was talking about communing with the earth and with the rocks. And that's what happens when you step into those sacred lands, because they have been built on these principles of love and respect, where nature comes first, where we communicate with all beings before we do anything to disturb the earth. That is the sense if you are sensitive in any way, if you love nature in any way, you can feel it. And that's what our intuition does. Our connection with nature will show us where we feel safe as well. So, we receive messages from the animals for our own ability to thrive in nature as well, to exist harmoniously with nature. And I'd love to tell one more story if we've got some time. I think we have got time, Linda, about the golden lionesses.
African stars. Yeah, it's as if we're around the fire under African skies with the stars twinkling, and we're telling stories. But these are real life stories, and they're pretty dramatic because they involve apex predators and risky decisions. And what are you going to tell now, Wynter?
Well, the Golden Girls, Kanyesi and Inyaleti. You can start off that story, Linda.
Okay, well, our project has combined wild lions from the region with the white lions who originate from the region. You'll probably know that some of the golden lions in this area carry the secret code. And so there were 2 wild golden lions who were donated to the project in the ecosystem, and they were very, very wild. They'd never actually been seen in that part of the ecosystem, but they were required. Well, it took about 6 weeks to try and find them, and eventually the search parties were going to cancel. So we got a message out to them through these techniques that if they want to be part of the White Lion Project, they have to show themselves at the warden's house, which, if you can picture, we're talking about thousands of hectares. So they had to come from their territories and actually show themselves at the warden's house, which is what they did after we said there's an ultimatum. You have a week, and then the search party is going to be called off, and then you can't be part of this project anymore if you want to be part of it. So sure enough, these 2 beautiful golden lionesses showed themselves at the warden's house. But it just so happened that he was getting married at that time. So he was at the magistrate's court to sign. So he wasn't there. And they left and they went back into the wilderness area, and we had to communicate with them again to call them back and say, okay, do the same again tomorrow, because if you don't come, the warden is going to call off the search for you. So they had to return a second time and respond to our message. And he was completely taken by surprise. He didn't think it was possible that they could traverse such an area and show up there. So it was a bizarre occurrence, but it was responding to your appeal to them. And then the problem is always humans in this work. Describe, we had primed him to behave in a certain way where he would have a carcass ready for them if they show up. But he hadn't done his side of the bargain.
Yes, we had promised. That's why when we're working in situations like this, everyone needs to be on the same page with sending the same messages. So we had promised the lionesses that there would be an offering of a springbok or impala rather, that they could settle on while we do the logistics of actually having to tranquilize them and take them, move them to their new territory with the white lions. And of course, the warden had forgotten to do this. So they arrived and the vet was ready to wait, managed to dart the one sister. And of course, because they hadn't been settled and given an offering, the other one suddenly got a fright and disappeared into the wilderness. And Linda, you need to take over here because this is your experience. I was sitting in Cape Town doing remote communication. I wasn't even on the ground.
But that's a very important point, is that this communication can be done wherever you are on the globe, because you're going into the field of love that unites all of us with the Great Mother. So Wynter was assisting me remotely while the drama was taking place on the ground. And I remember trying to get signal in the middle of an ecosystem and getting through to Wynter and saying, this is a disaster. The warden hasn't followed the protocols and what he agreed. We've broken the contract with the lionesses, that we're going to lose one sister. She's going back. And I'm desperate. I was on my knees, trying to connect with her. And you connected with her. And then a moment later, she appeared out of nowhere in the middle of this massive ecosystem with these wide eyes of desperation, saying, what must I do? What must I do? And I said, go back to your sister, show yourself, and that is the only way you will get to see your sister again, because this is the last opportunity. And she turned around, disappeared into this vast ecosystem. And then we work on radios remotely. And then we could hear on the radio about 15 minutes later that she suddenly appeared back at the site where her sister was. The warden had then... Now, you're getting into the crux of a project on the ground. He had then finally shot an impala. But think about it. You're a lioness. You hear a shot go off. The last thing you're going to do is to go towards the shot and hand yourself in. I mean, what was he thinking? He shot an impala right next to the vehicle. And then she did show up and she told us, she said, well, that was the deal. You said he was going to give us an impala. So now he has, here I am. And she handed herself over.
And really, the impala presented himself to the warden, offered himself up, because, with all that activity, why would an impala present itself as well? So it was, all of nature was working together to make sure that those two lionesses were safe and came through to the project. And it really is, and that technique of communicating when you are looking for an animal, whether it's a wild animal, whether it's your domestic animal friend who's gone walkabout and you can't find them, telling them where to go, asking them to show themselves is probably the best method. And I've actually written that story in my book, Where is Biggles? Because although the story is about missing animals, that story about Kanyesa and Inyaleti are it's just that in a bigger concept. And it just shows you how miracles happen when we are in tune with nature, with all that is, and with these particular individuals. We can communicate with whole herds of animals, and we can communicate with individuals. We can communicate with the landscapes, with the trees, with the waters. And they can communicate with us. It's not that we're special. We are not special. We are just part of this great ecosystem. We are not different. We have made ourselves different through this great separation sickness that we have chosen to live by for whatever reason. And that reason is normally fear. Oh, it's just so lovely to recount these beautiful stories way back, and even today, and every day I think Linda and I are in contact at least once a week, connecting in with each other about the lions, about the happenings in the project. And I truly believe it's why this project has been such an incredible success, over the decades, never faltering and always trusting nature's guidance. It is vital. It really is. So thank you, Linda, for...
And the white lions lead the way as these luminaries. And that's a beautiful comment in the feed about them being created as manifest form of the Elohim feel. All of creation, because literally in their constitution, they have all the other species, and so they serve all the other species. It's always a reminder that we feel we are the apex and separate, but the true apex serves, like the pyramid of life, they serve all the trophic levels all the way down. And so every day we have something to learn from the grand design.
And just one more story before we end was, I just remember a message from the wildebeest, because the wildebeest are the herds that the lions enjoy hunting the most. And I remember asking them how they feel about being the preferred prey, and they came to me and they showed me this image of this spiral of running wildebeest, running right up to the top, and at the top was a winged lion. And they showed me that when they become prey, they become the winged lion. And it was it was such a humble thought, and it felt like an honor for them that they were serving this great process. And then again, the winged lion, or Mandla, the elder lion, who was the founding elder the male elder of the project, he showed me that he becomes the wildebeest when he partakes of the wildebeest. So bringing in everything into his constitution. So yes, so much wisdom to be learned from nature.
And when the lion rests and returns to earth, then the wildebeest feeds on the grass that is imbued by the presence of the great being of the lion. So there's a consciousness of interbeing that is so exquisite when you really tap into it in this way.
Beautiful, just beautiful, beautiful. I'm so enthralled by what you're saying. What was coming to my mind is a little story that I would like to share, since you've been sharing stories, which brings out a deeper dimension to what you were both talking about the interpermeability of life when it's living in harmony. I had the opportunity a number of years ago to to meet with Amy Morgana, who was a woman, very reclusive woman, who lived in New York, who had an African gray parrot that she had picked up in a pet store, who, much to her surprise, announced to her, "Choose me." Anyway, Nkezi was his name. And I met her through Rupert Sheldrake. Were doing a documentary on this extraordinary clairvoyance of this parrot. And through a series of negotiations, Amy allowed me to come and visit her. I knew that she had had a breast cancer and an operation about a month before I was to come. So when I left my hotel in the morning, I was in New York City, and I took a taxi to visit her. I had the thought in my mind, I should buy her some flowers just to express my appreciation. And this was before the internet. So I thought I'll just pass one along the way. So I told the taxi driver, if we pass a florist shop, I'd like to stop and buy some flowers. Well, we never passed a florist shop. So I got to Amy's, knocked on the door, and she opened the door. And immediately, Nkezi said to me in English, "Where are the flowers? You were going to bring Amy flowers." And he kind of dive bombed me with irritability that I hadn't brought his mistress flowers. And it was such a shock to me that this parrot had a clairvoyance that knew who was coming, was somehow in my mind, having had no previous contact with me, that I was going to do something as explicit as bring flowers to Amy. And that began a conversation that lasted 3 to 4 hours between Amy and Nkezi and me, in which he said that he regularly, every day, talked with the other birds in the area. And it's basically, chatter about what the current state of the humans are, and how they're coping with the complete ignorance of the humans as to what's actually happening. And Nkezi was capable of writing poetry. He would watch Sesame Street on TV. He had a command, I think, of 600 or 700 words, and demonstrated a capacity not only to commune telepathically, obviously, but in language. And that's an extraordinary other dimension that I just wanted to bring into our conversation, that we're talking about beings, everybody, who actually are as capacious as we are, because they're in different configurations of space and sacred geometry, as lions or birds rather than humans. They express these capacities in different ways. But they, once we establish the communication with them and the love and the reverence of them, I think we'll be constantly astonished at how capable they are of communicating what we need to know and understand, not only in terms of sort of the present moment, but with a prescient that can guide us through this thicket that we have brought upon ourselves because of our inability thus far to communicate with them in an intelligible way. So anyway, as we begin our discussion, I just wanted to bring that in And I imagine both of you know Amy, but whatever comment you would want to make about what is emerging about who these beings really are and how capable they are for all the kinds of communication that we're learning, and we're discovering they have much more, which we have yet to discover. So that this is an ongoing journey, as I'm viewing it, into the discovery of the exquisite genius of every species out there, and the opportunity now to learn more about this in a disciplined way. And I put the link, Wynter, to your program in the chat because I want to encourage everyone to sign up. And there's a information session, everyone, on May 10th. And we'll be sending out a special communication to all of our Ubiquity students and all of our Humanity Rising community about this community call coming up on May 30th at 10 p.m. Pacific. But talk to us, just both of you, for a moment about your own journey as you're deepening your communication, that you're also broadening the scope of within which the communication can actually take place. They're very dimensionalized.
Gosh, where to start? I think, I've always said that the animals are my greatest teachers, so every time I enter into a communication with an animal or any other being, I learn so much more. And, there's that, people have been talking describing other animals or speaking of them as non-human animals is the term. And then there's people who talk about them as more than human animals. And, one of the things that I have constantly am astounded at is their depth of compassion for us humans. Because would we tolerate if any other species were doing to us what the human species have done to just mammals or, the animal life on this other animal life on this planet? Would we tolerate that as much as they have? And it is just astounding. I remember communicating with an elephant many years ago, one that had been habituated to humans for human experience, and she'd seen her whole family had been killed, and she'd been kidnapped from the wild. And there was this immense grief that I was picking up. But when I felt into that grief, it wasn't grief for herself. It was for humanity. It was grief for the humans who just were so separated and could not be part of this miraculous world that she was still part of, even though she was so traumatized. So that takes it to another level for me. If we understand if we can understand animals on that level, how humbling is that, and that was something I don't know if that's what you wanted, the kind of thing you wanted to hear.
If you think, for example, of the experience of Jane Goodall, when after her years in Kenya and Tanzania with the chimpanzees, with the Leakeys, Richard Leakey said, you need to do a PhD. You need to kind of go from the direct experience to the kind of the rigor of Cambridge University in that case. And when she went to Cambridge, she had given the different chimpanzees names, and the authorities there said, you can't do that. You can't, they're its. They have no personalities. They have no characters of their own. They're just instinctually driven creatures. So if you think about, that's where we have been as a culture, as a Western culture. The work that the two of you have done, with Jane and with myriad others that you know and will be bringing in over the course of the week, we've come an extraordinarily long way over the last 50 years in appreciating that which we have completely denied. And the more we're finding out about them, the more we're appreciating what you just said, Wynter, that in many ways they're more capacious than we are. We've actually closed ourselves down as we've withdrawn from alignment with nature, even though we've maintained technical prowess and technical power. Our faculties are actually quite primitive. I mean, our cell phones do more than we do these days. And the animal communication, the ecospecies communication is really the antidote to our own imprisonment and, I would say, primitivization of the human being as a result of our alienation. And I know, Linda, you've talked about this for many, many decades, and that the white lions can actually lead us to where we now need to go, which indicates that they're in a superior level of consciousness than we are after our centuries of degradation.
Absolutely. If I could pick up on that and try and distill what I now understand is that, the golden lions have walked the eons with humanity and carry a lot of karma as a consequence of that. They were forced to do things that was not their true nature by humans, by kings who wanted their opponents to be consumed by lions, or, Roman emperors who wanted blood sport and to see lions in the Colosseum eating slaves. It wasn't their choice. They were starved and they were forced to do that. And therefore, as a species, there's a lot of what I would call karma within the golden lion species who's restoring itself now. But it's fascinating how the white lions simply rewrite the textbooks that we know about lion behavior. Or they can hunt for themselves, no problem, because they're nature. But the textbook says lions are killing machines, and if the male lions come into a kill, they will kill the cubs because it's survival of the fittest, and it's they take the lion's share. Well, that's not the case with the encoding of the white lions. If the little cubs come in, the huge male will step back and allow the cubs to eat first. So there's a recoding of the true sense of higher order consciousness through love that the white lions usher into our traumatized world. And it's a privilege every single moment to be, have the responsibility of protecting and guarding them.
Yeah, there's a question in the question and answer about your website. It's talking about an intake that will open this month. Can you tell us more about that? It's the Heart Pride program. So Wynter, maybe you could comment on this, because I think people want to now get really involved. So I'd like to have you comment on that question and also describe in general terms what your program is for the Intuitive Interspecies program with Ubiquity University.
Yes, sure. Well, I'll speak to the Heart Pride first. That was something that I developed. Well, it came about in 2020 when the world went through that crisis. I had always brought groups to teach, in-person groups to teach interspecies communication at the project, and specialized groups. And of course, in lockdown, we couldn't travel and nobody could get there. So I think the Lions showed me an amazing way of still supporting the trust and still getting people to learn about interspecies communication. And that was through a virtual journey. So what I did, my husband and partner was the videographer. We went up there and we filmed, because the technology it wasn't a live feed, but we filmed how we would go and visit the lions on the lion check on the vehicle, and then we created this virtual journey, and it was 20 sort of lion hearts that I didn't know if it was going to work. I had no idea what I was doing, really, not being that technical. And it was an incredible 5 days of people sitting on Zoom, connecting with the lions in almost real time. There was about a few day lag. And at the end of that journey, because part of the work that I do now that has developed from the intuitive interspecies communication is, I call it heart work, heart energy achieving real transformation, where we commune with Mother Nature to receive guidance on our next actions so that we can achieve transformation. And of course, the white lions were leading this. And at the end of that journey, we decided to form a heart pride. And that over the years has become a formal membership in support of the Global White Lion Protection Trust. And the membership opens up once or twice a year, and it does open up at the end of May again, where we meet monthly to do work with the lions and with Mother Nature to connect and receive guidance on further actions and co-creating a new way with Mother Nature. So that's the heart pride. Inspired by the lions and in service of Mother Nature. And then the Ubiquity program, I will speak more about it tomorrow if you're going to be.
Well, then let's leave it for tomorrow.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Jim.
Two final questions. One that just came in from Kim Kerrigan for both of you is whether the white and golden lions like to be, groomed and brushed and have, I would say, physical contact with humans like you, or do you keep your distance, honor them, but do not engage in physical proximity?
Well, this is an incredibly intimate and painful question, because I have memories of past lives, in the priesthood of Egypt, where we cohabited with lions. I would suckle cubs and they would suckle my young. That was a memory, ancestral memory. But that loving bond that existed in the high priesthood of various ages has been brutally exploited in our own age, where, as you know, this captive breeding industry forcibly removes mothers from their newborn cubs, only to commoditize the cubs to be petted by tourists for money and then exploited in other ways until they're finally shot as trophies or given over to the lion bone trade. So that question goes right to the core of the heart of the issue. They are incredibly tactile, sentient beyond anything we know. I have witnessed a lioness grieve for years and years at having seen her sister die in a poacher's snare. Their sentience and co-sentience is beyond anything we can imagine. And so do they enjoy being touched? Absolutely. Absolutely. They are constantly grooming each other, kissing each other. The males, when they encounter each other, touch foreheads and then rub cheeks. And when they sleep, they'll throw their paws over each other. They are pure sentient beings. As I say, beyond anything we can truly imagine.
Do you personally touch them and groom them, Wynter?
No, so I specifically don't, because my greatest contribution in this life has been to rewild them and ensure they have.
Yes, to rewild them. Yes.
That is, I mean, I yearn every day to be out there sleeping with them with my hand over their belly. But honestly, in this lifetime, with the utter, atrocities we've perpetuated on this planet, the greatest thing I can do is to ensure their freedom, and more than that, to ensure that they are governing their ancestral lands, which are a sacred natural site. When the apex animal and the king of kings, the white lions, are governing their sacred natural site, they hold a key to the restoration of the planet. And in some other in some videos that I've shared with this group at times, you can actually see from Google Earth, if you look at the land that they walk, that they've restored the health and healing to the ecosystem underfoot. It's astounding. So again, we've come full circle. Nature does not need us to regenerate, but she would love us. The awakening mother has given us an ultimatum through the Kogi prophecy right now, as you've spoken. But she's still inviting us to join her as she rises, and therefore humanity rises.
Wynter, what would be your comment?
Well, just also, I feel like my my duty here is to say to people there are many, many opportunities that people offer where you can go and cuddle a lion cub, and any place that offers that is not, in today's world and the way life is today, is not doing this in the best interests of the lions and nature. And truly we have to be hands off completely in when we're rewilding nature. And so people just be discerning for the projects that you support, because there are places there that try and dupe people into believing that it's the right thing to do.
You think of the porpoises and the dolphins that are kept in these pools and have to entertain the tourists and jump up for food, and you feel sorry for them. I mean, you appreciate, and then they have the people, little kids pet them and so forth and so on, and you kind of agonize in your heart that they're being subjected to such servitude. So I think that's a really important point. And I think it's fundamental what you said, Linda, that your job is to rewild them. That's the first step. And maybe in a couple of generations in the wild, the Lindas and the Wynters of the world will go out and sleep with them at night, as invited. And but let me ask a final question from Kurt Kruger, which I think is a powerful question, and that is a question of the relationship between the white lions, in particular, I think, Linda, and I'd like to start with you, and issues of war and peace. The world is careening toward a global conflict. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have conflict in Ukraine. We have genocide going on in Gaza. We have escalating tensions in China with the United States and NATO. I'm mindful of what you said, which I didn't know. I didn't really forget before you said it, Linda, some years ago, that the white lions down in Timbavati and the Great Rift Valley and the pyramids of Giza, the Great Sphinx of Giza, which is the lion head, and Gaza and Ukraine are on the same energetic, let's call it a ley line, in terms of the planet. So you have this extraordinary juxtaposition in one of the energetic circulatory points of the planet. What you're doing, the Rift Valley, which is the site of the most ancient humans as far as we know, the great majestic pyramids and Sphinx of Egypt, and now this extraordinary violence happening in Gaza and Ukraine. And the question that Kurt is posing, which I think is very profound, is what, if we could convene a conference, a peace conference, and invite the white lions, just imagine if we would confer about matters of war and peace, not amongst ourselves. I don't think we're capable of that anymore because we're so disconnected from nature and disconnected from the greater reality. And one of the reasons why we become so violent is because of our increasing disconnection. It's not that we're bad as a species, it's just that we've cut ourselves off from the mother. We've cut ourselves off from the great web of life, the great Indra's net. But again, starting with you, Linda, then you, Wynter, I would love to have your comment that if the great white lions were invited to advise at a conference in terms of humanity's almost obsession with conflict right now amongst itself, at the same level that we're in conflict with nature, what would they tell us? What would they advise?
Well, that is the fundamental question, and I've reached so deep into it because they are holding that exact ley line, that tectonic plate where humanity's conflict is playing out now. So they are saying nature has the solution. Not only does the mother have the solution, but she is modeling it. It is there for us to reach into. Those of us who are seeking hope and heart have a model that is taking place in real time in the ecosystem where all species give to the greater good of the whole. And because all are giving to the greater good of the whole, it's a healing system. So they're asking for a quantum shift from us and for us to recognize that when we, exactly what you said at the beginning of this time together, when we put nature first, we have our solutions. Because I know of projects in Israel along the shared rivers with Palestine, where Palestinians and Israelis have been working together. EcoPeace is one of those, for the Jordan River. And it creates such peace amongst those divides because there's a common interest of serving and cleaning and restoring the river. When you put nature first, you solve human issues. When you try to
exactly
first, you are on, you're going closer and closer to the precipice of irresolvable conflict. We have our solution.
Beautifully put. Thank you. Thank you. Wynter, what would be your comment?
The first thing they would say to me, and on all levels, is to listen with your heart rather than your head and your fear. Because I think every conflict, well, I've been shown and learned that every conflict comes from fear, this disconnect from the heart and disconnect from nature. So when we, the lions have always told me to go into the heart in order to understand them and other species, and also to understand each other. So, that it sounds quite obvious that is the solution to all war, but how do we get humans to start listening to their hearts when we've been so conditioned to be disconnected from our hearts? And I think if we had a peace conference with the lions and all the other animals and the trees and the rocks and everyone, we would find a solution if only we listened. If we listened to them with our hearts, we certainly would find solutions. Let's hope one day there's a president that will listen with his heart. Global president.
A president anywhere
Anyway.
that would listen. And it's worth noting, on this point that, starting with the president of Bolivia, Evo Morales. He was the first one, the first indigenous president elected in Bolivia to champion the rights of nature. And that began an international movement that is now going from country to country in various ways, and not with the momentum that we would like to see. But there is the consciousness beginning to emerge in the political debate that nature has rights, and that whether they're rivers like in India and very specific places in other parts of the world, they're being given civil liberties. And that's an indication that the work that you're doing among numerous others to reconnect with nature is beginning to percolate through the global zeitgeist, the mindset of humanity in an inexorable way. So I want to acknowledge both of you as pioneers of the heart around reconnecting humanity with the larger living web, which is the key, as you're both saying, to our survival now as a species and to the planetary ecology in terms of its equilibrium. So thank you both very, very much for your beautiful presentation today. It's been absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And Wynter, we're so thrilled to be partnering with you and also with you, Linda, on these matters for a full graduate program in interspecies communication with an information session for all of you out there who are interested on the 30th of May. And we'll be sending out communication to all of you about this program. Learning the mother tongue, I believe, is the most important thing any human being should be doing right now. The mother tongue.
I second that. Yep. Perfectly said. Thank you so much, Jim. And I love the mother tongue. I think communicating, learning the mother tongue.
Final words that you'd like to make? Maybe Linda, you first, and then Wynter.
Well, I second that and have written that in support of interspecies communication, that it is the most important awakening in humanity for us to return to our true natures.
Yes. Yeah. Wynter?
Just
I say, lions are roaring. I don't think you can hear them, but they've just started roaring to conclude the session.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's a Wynter.
That's beautiful. And I just want to thank everyone so much for being so open to this, and Jim, for you. And really, it is up to us. we can't wait anymore for someone else to come along and tell us what to do. The animals are speaking. They're telling us all the time. All we need to do is open our hearts and listen, and then take action on their guidance. It's, one thing listening and sitting in your armchair, but take action, even if that is, doing the heart work, the co-creative work. But it's up to us now. So thank you, everyone, for being part of this incredible movement, this incredible new way of being. Thank you.
I suggest we all just take a moment, close our eyes, open our hearts, and listen to the roar of the lions. They're affirming everything we're doing. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. You're all welcome to the after chat. You'll see the link in the chat box. And we'll see you tomorrow for day 2 of our program on intuitive interspecies communication. And between now and then, let the roar of those lions who were right on cue reverberate in your heart. This is powerful. This is powerful. Bye for now.
Thank you.